Well, thank you very much, Conference. I want to begin by saying thank you, first of all, to our great Labour councillors and leaders, David, Jim, Simon, Anne, for the work they do to stand up for Labour values in hard times, to all the members of our team in the Commons and the Lords, Emma, Roberta, Andy, Lynn, Paul, Susan, Bill and Jeremy, and to everyone who served on the Policy Commission. Last Thursday, the people of Scotland made their decision. They voted against separation, but they voted for change. And in the years to come, this moment will be seen in history as the time when the ground shifted beneath our feet. A moment, let's be honest, it's uncertain and exhilarating in equal measure, but it's full of opportunity. A moment to lift up our eyes. We get the message about the distance and, yes, at times the alienation that too many people feel from politics. And we have a plan to radically transform our political system so that people can see that change is coming. It's no wonder there's discontent. We see Tory ministers on the television telling everyone the economy is doing fine. There's nothing to see here, they say. Everything's okay, just move along. It shows how out of touch they are. People are working hard day after day, putting in the hours, doing the best for their family, but finding it tough. Pay isn't going up enough to meet the gas and the electricity bills. Nearly 1.5 million people are on 0 hours contracts, not knowing from one week to the next how much they will earn. And for those on the very lowest incomes, David Cameron's bedroom tax, pushing families into a spiral of debt. It's a rotten policy that comes from rotten values, that has no regard for security and decency. Well, Conference, we have different values. We reject the bedroom tax, and we will scrap it. Now, what about our broken housing market? House building at its lowest peacetime level since the 1920s. Young people doing all they can to save, but knowing that their dream of home ownership is gradually moving further and further out of reach. So they end up renting and often find themselves paying off somebody else's mortgage rather than one on a home of their own. They probably have a short-term tenancy. They worry the rent may jump up if they get a new contract. And if their children are just starting primary school, what kind of stability and security is there if you may be forced to move away from friends and neighbours next year? Now, we hear these stories. The government doesn't get it, but we do. And that's why we're determined to introduce 3-year tenancies, to put a ceiling on rent increases, to scrap letting agents' charges for tenants, and to build at least 200,000 homes a year by the end of the next Parliament. Because we know that a home is where we feel most secure. And how are we going to do this? By being bold and by offering a different kind of politics. By giving people the responsibility to make it happen and the means to do so. So instead of communities feeling, well, they can't influence where the homes go because the developers are ignoring the sites the council's identified and are trying to build somewhere else. Instead of communities saying, well, the design's poor, those rooms are too small, where are the GP surgeries and the roads and the schools? Instead of them thinking, well, even if the houses do get built, are we going to get one? Our neighbours, our friends? Instead of all of this, we will give communities, as Sir Michael Lyons' report will recommend, the powers they need to tackle land banking, to put together the sites, to get the design right, to put in the infrastructure, and to work with small and medium-sized and large builders to build the homes that local people need in the places that local people want. And Conference, we will work with councils so that they can build more council houses, as Suzanne said. Let's be proud of the Labour councils already leading the way and outbuilding Tory councils. The building of social homes by Labour councils on a scale not witnessed for a generation. Conference, the problem with housing is actually a symptom of the problem with our politics. People feel distant from the decisions that affect their daily lives. They don't feel in control. They want to have a bigger say. And that's why the ground is shifting. So we will build a new politics that works for people rather than just telling them, well, I'm afraid that's how things have to be. It's where we started as a movement. It's how we first won the people's trust. Now, our fellow citizens who went to those polling stations 4 days ago spoke not just for themselves, but for the whole United Kingdom. Labour will honour the promise that we made to Scotland. And we will offer a new deal to England too. The people of England have been very patient. And in that very English way, they're now saying, excuse me, but what about us? Well, we're listening. And that's why Labour will offer England a new deal that will pass power down and money down and responsibility down. I want cities and counties, towns and districts, parishes and neighbourhood to make more decisions for themselves and to have more control over the money that they raise and contribute. But I want that to be fair, because what we have now certainly isn't. Just look at the shameful and deliberate way the Tories have taken most money from the most deprived communities. Do you know they're cutting spending power for every household in the 10 most deprived areas of the country by 16 times as much as the 10 least deprived? 16 times. They've targeted Labour Liverpool, Labour Hackney, Labour Knowsley, Labour Birmingham, while at the very same time they've actually given increases to Tory Elmbridge, Tory Surrey Heath and Tory Wokingham. Rotten values once again. It's not fair. We will change it. We will make sure that the money we have is fairly shared, and we will make sure that devolution goes hand in hand with redistribution from each according to their ability to contribute, to each according to their need. That's why we will take £30 billion from Whitehall over 5 years and pass it to local communities, to city and county regions across the length and breadth of the land, to give them the means to create the jobs, to help people into those jobs, to give them the skills they need to take those jobs, to invest in the trams, the buses, the railways and the roads, to help them get to work and businesses to thrive, and to build those homes for those workers and their children. It's why we'll say to local authorities, help us to commission the new work programme. It's why we'll give local areas control over the funding of further education for 19 to 24-year-olds. That's why we will put together the money for health and social care so that local communities can provide better integrated care for the old, for those with long-term conditions and disabilities. Why should our mums and dads be sent to hospital or kept in hospital any longer than they need to for want of a grab rail or someone to get them up in the morning? Isn't that what we would want for them? And isn't that what we would want for us when it's our time? And by doing all of this, we will help communities to build a stronger economy, a stronger society, and a more equal one too, so that not only does London get investment and flourish, but Leeds and Birmingham and Manchester and Newcastle and Sheffield and Bristol and Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire and Cornwall and, yes, Mike, Essex, because our New Deal is for all parts of England. Now, conference, this will be the biggest economic decentralisation this century. But it won't be enough. We will go further in changing the way that decisions are made so that we can free local communities, the people of England, to shape their own destiny. Not something cooked up in the corridors of Whitehall, but a deeper, a more profound change involving people from every part of the country. A national debate leading to a constitutional convention, as fervent and as involved as the one that led to the creation of the Scottish Parliament. And I say this is not about the long grass. This is about the grassroots telling us what they want in the long term. A convention with a purpose. Change that is a means to an end. No longer, well, what are you going to do for me? But in future, what are we going to do for ourselves? Conference change is coming. Change that devolves power, but which also binds our country together. every part of the United Kingdom, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in solidarity, as you said, Joanna, earlier. England and Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And you know, despite the cynics and the critics, it's everyone's responsibility to stand up for our democracy, to cherish our democracy, to have faith in our democracy, because we know it's how we built a better society before and how we will do so again tomorrow. Yes, there's a lot more to do, but you know, the next time someone tells you that getting involved, doing your bit, standing up, getting organised, the next time someone tells you voting doesn't make any difference, look them in the eye and tell them it's not true. And then tell them this. 70 years ago, Europe lay in ruins. We heard huge debts. Money was short. But faced with this, what did the British people do? They chose to put their trust in Labour because they wanted to change the country. It was a Labour government which started building homes for the returning troops and for those whose homes had been bombed. It was a Labour government that strengthened the welfare state. It was a Labour government that gave life to the NHS, which is why we will fight to the death to save it. People came together to change their own lives and the lives of their neighbours. And how did they do it? By drawing on compassion for each other, a burning desire to make things better, and using that most powerful weapon of all in a democracy: ideas, a pencil, and a piece of paper, cross after cross after cross, that built the NHS, that strengthened the welfare state and built those homes. And that was how the people of Scotland made their decision last Thursday. That is how the British people will make theirs next May. Now, we know how much this matters. We know how hard the fight will be. But, conference, we also know that the greatest victories are won in the toughest circumstances. So let us go from here. Let's give people hope. Go out there and win.